Appreciate everyone joining us for Penn State Football Local Media Day. We have Coach Franklin here first. We'll start with an opening statement from him, and then we'll open it up for questions.
First of all, welcome back. It's great to have everybody here. We are going into day 3 of practice. First 2 days have been good. Specifically, day 2 was better than day 1. And today obviously is the first day for pads for us and some hitting, so that obviously changes some things. Having the 3 new coordinators been really good. Been a ton of work put in from the time that they got on board with the staff, getting everybody on the same page, and with the players. But that's been good. That's been good. Ton of carryover for things that we've done in the past, but also a lot of new wrinkles and things like that. So it's been really good. But looking forward to the opportunity to be able to get you guys out there so you guys can get a glimpse of it and get some pictures. Obviously, we've got Media Day as well in terms of interacting with the returning players. As you guys know, we don't have the first-year players available, but everybody else will be available in the staff. And look forward to an exciting year with you guys and an exciting season. So open up the questions.
Start over here with Mark and Rich.
James, with the house settlement, how is that going to impact you guys from a scholarship perspective, numbers-wise? Do you have to reevaluate how many you're going to give every year and that sort of thing?
You talking about for next year?
Yeah, because they're the kids you're actually recruiting at this point.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think everybody is working on kind of plans based on what we know, but not everything has been settled. And I think the other thing is every school and every program is going to handle it a little bit differently, what they think is best. Because I think everybody understands there's no more limiting number of scholarships, they're limiting roster sizes is how they're handling it. So every school, will have the flexibility within that to do what they think is best. But there's still some things that we're still waiting to get resolved and details worked out. But we have some time.
Here in the front, Rich.
June, how has Julian Fleming looked so far in these few practices, and how far do the wide receivers have to go to get where you want them to be?
Yeah, so I would say solid. He's been solid. He's been. I think they've all been good at times. It's still obviously a small number of practices and number of plays to truly evaluate. I thought our entire staff as well as team felt like the wide receivers took a big jump in day 2 compared to day 1. And I know a lot of the coaches and players. Jay Reed actually spoke to the team after practice about it. So I thought that was a real positive. But it's just kind of a small pool right now to really base that off of. I'll have a better idea, a week from now. But so far solid, and obviously there's still some steps that need to be taken there for that entire room. Obviously that's been a big question mark for the media and some of the fans. I think the coaching staff and I think the players have I would say a good amount of confidence in what that room has the ability to do and the amount of work that they've put in with Bo and Drew all summer.
Over here on the right, Bob.
Hey James, how you doing?
Good, are you?
I'm good. James, when you just look at your defensive end and you get past Abdul and Deny, guys I know that have a chance to have some really big years for you, who are some of the guys behind them that you're excited about and can maybe take a step forward for you and you're counting on maybe in August and moving forward?
And you said Deny and Abdul?
Yeah. When you get past those 2 guys, obviously they're kind of known quantities. Behind them, who are the guys you're kind of excited about, and maybe who are the guys you're counting on to take another step in August?
Yeah, so first of all, I wouldn't even say behind them. Amin Vanover is a guy that I don't think enough people are talking about. We have a ton of confidence in Amin. And then I think the other guy that, and I get why, but a lot of people aren't talking about is Smith Gilbert. Smith Gilbert is a guy that we have a lot of confidence in as an organization and as a program. He's missed obviously a lot of football, so you guys haven't had a chance to see him the way we have. But you talk about big, strong, physical, experienced, mature. So that gives us really three defensive ends that have played a ton of football in my mind in terms of games and practice with Vanover, Deny, and Vilbert. And then you got Carter, who's new to the position, but still has played a ton of football. And then we got Mason Robinson, who's going into year 2 in the program, that we're gonna need for him to take a significant step for us. And then after that, there's a bunch of guys, whether it's Mopoye, whether it's Williams, whether it's Mayer, whether it is Granville, there's other guys kinda in the mix there. But I would say for us, you got Vanover, Carter, Deny, Vilbert, Mopoye, and Mason Robinson, probably the 6 guys that we know the most about right now, if that makes sense.
Middle left, Todd.
Hey, Coach. How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Good. Generally speaking, do you see more progress in the guys from spring practice to camp, physically or mentally? And the ones that kind of jump off the page maybe mentally, does it show itself in command of the playbook or the way that they communicate with their teammates or just the way they carry themselves confidence-wise? Or are there any guys that kind of fit that mold so far that you've seen?
Just to be clear, compared to what?
No, just what they looked like, an individual from the spring to now. Whether, physically you can kind of see them, the differences, but mentally, how do you see guys progressing? Do you generally see more physical or mental progress? And mentally,
I got you.
how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's probably both, maybe not the answer that you want, but probably both. I mean, you see changes. A guy that right away to me, when we went out on the field on the first day, was Tamir. Tamir looked different, really looked good. You noticed that right away. I think everybody kind of had noticed Rojas already. Obviously, the numbers that have been reported, and just looking at him, he obviously looks different as well. Another guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, but we're excited about, that has really kind of changed his body as well, is Boyer. I want to say Boyer's put on 35, 40 pounds, and is really doing some nice things. But I would say that's probably the biggest change in terms of physical appearance. And then in terms of mentally, obviously is a big jump at the quarterback position. Grunk is really doing some nice things. We think he's got a very, very bright future, and is really taking a step. I think Jackson Smolik has been really impressive in terms of what he's been able to do mentally. Maximizing what he's able to do right now, that's been impressive as well. But I think it's just a combination. Some guys have a lot of room for growth mentally. Some guys have a lot of room for growth physically. But there's a few examples.
Right, Tyler.
Hey James, how are you?
Good, Tyler, how are you?
Good. You mentioned Max Granville as one of those guys that you're looking to learn more about. We all are. Can you kind of peel back the curtain as much as you're comfortable doing, and when you realized it was a possibility you could be on this roster, and kind of the final moments with him and his family where this was the outcome, and what you can realistically expect from a freshman who didn't get here until the final week of July?
Yeah, he's already flashed in the first 2 days. Athletic, quick, a lot of things you saw on the high school tape, but you don't know if those things are going to show up when they get here. But that's already happened. He also tested really well with our baseline testing with Coach Losi and that staff, as soon as he was cleared and able to do that. In terms of the process, we really kind of had no idea until really very late in the process that this was even something they were thinking about. And then there's one thing to be thinking about, there's another thing to actually be able to do it. I think he was taking summer classes to be able to ensure the fact that he'd be able to come at mid-semester, and then I think once he got the classes done and realized he could qualify now and graduate now, that they brought the option up to us, and I think that also triggered to us that they're very serious about Penn State, because they're having these types of conversations with us. But it was pretty late in the process, so then there was a ton of work that had to happen for him in terms of the application process and all that, for us in terms of getting all that documentation, and then also getting him here. Like, I think the same weekend his brother got married, so they had the wedding, and then we're driving here, so there was a lot of stuff that we had to get done in a short period of time, and because of the wedding, it's not like he could even come a couple days early, like was getting here right at the last minute. But so far, first impression, really good. But obviously there's a big difference between running around, in shorts and a t-shirt than there is in full pads. So we'll see that today. We'll have a better idea.
In the back, Al.
Hey coach, how are you?
Yeah.
Jaywan and Ty talked at the end of last season about getting the ball in the hands of the best players, regardless of who that was. How does Coach K subscribe to that mentality, and how are you anticipating seeing that play out with guys like Drew and Bo, Nick and Katron, kind of that third-year class of guys? How do you think Coach K is going to handle just the number of offensive guys he has?
Yeah, so, I think really you can kind of take two different points right here, talking points from a conversation standpoint. Is explosive plays to me goes hand in hand with getting your best players the ball. I felt like, the last couple games of the year, you saw a significant change there. So obviously with that kind of went through the interview process. That was a big part of the interview process is production of explosive plays and the data to back it up, not just saying, in an interview, hey, I want to be explosive, the data to back it up. But then also philosophically, how are you going to get your best players the ball? How are you going to get them touches? How are you going to get them touches early in the game? Those types of things was a big part of it. And then again, it's one thing to talk about those things in the process. It's another thing to go watch the film. It's another thing to study the data and make sure that those things are happening. Sometimes easier said than done, depending on the position the guy plays. But so far so good, and been a ton of discussions in the off season about that. And then I think, from him being able to watch us, during bowl prep, and then winter workouts, and then spring ball, and all these types of things, I think he's got a pretty good idea of the guys we have, the weapons we have, the experience we have, and then I think the other thing we're gonna have to do, back to the development of some of these positions, is hopefully by game 3, we feel like there's other guys that you guys are all talking about, our best players, and that we're talking about in terms of people we have to get more touch into.
Over here on the right in the front, John.
James, how are you?
Hey, John.
How many guys do you plan on playing at corner this fall, and who is standing out right now as potential starters at that position?
Yeah, Terry's the model. I mean, Terry's the model in terms of recruiting and in terms of development. You would say, typically, when you have a year where you essentially lost 2 corners to the NFL, that you would feel like that was a big question mark going into the season, and feel like that was an area where maybe you had some concerns. But we actually feel like that position from top to bottom could be better this year athletically. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. They still got to do it on game day, and obviously when you've lost the amount of production that we've lost at that position, we understand that. But in terms of, I'd say 7 guys that went through spring ball and went through summer and now are in training camp, we feel really good about those 7 guys, and specifically 6 guys, 3 deep on either side. Right now, it's hard to really say. Cam Miller's got the most experience here at Penn State. You guys know how we feel about AC, Davian Collins, and what he's been able to do all season. Been a ton of conversation, maybe the most improved guy on our roster since the end of the season. Kimber's come in and really developed and changed his body in our strength and conditioning program, and has played a lot of football in a very good conference. Harris, there's just a lot of guys that we feel good about. Tracy, who, we got a ton of confidence in, and Washington, who we got a ton of confidence in, and all those guys have, for the most part, either played, whether it's played here or played at other places. So Terry just does a really good job in terms of rebuilding and retooling that position. And I don't think it's a position that as coaches we have a ton of concerns about. Now, just to be, again, to answer your question, I just don't know, I don't have enough practices to feel like it's these guys. I think we got a group of players that we feel really good about. Now, somebody's got to separate themselves and be the guy, or we're gonna be rotating a lot of high-quality players that we feel good about.
Back left, Dan.
Hey, Coach. You guys are putting in obviously a new offense with Coach Kotelnicki. Can you walk us through what the process of installing an offense looks like, and where are you on that timeline, and are you happy where you're at on that timeline?
Yeah, and I think you guys have heard me say this before, we're really not in a position in year 11 in the program to start all over. We have not done that. So I think you guys have heard me say this before, so in terms of all three coordinators were hired based on what they had done well in their careers, but also what are you able to do and how comfortable are you, honestly, comfortable keeping the same and what needs to change. I would say on offense there's probably more change than on defense and special teams, but probably not as much as you guys would think. So I think Andy's done a really good job of that. That takes a ton of confidence, that takes a ton of intelligence, and I think it also takes enough experience that you feel like you're able to do that. And again, that's so that we don't have 50 players learning a completely new system. We have, kind of a blend, combination of one coordinator and then the things that need to change. So I think we're in a good spot there. I think some of the rule changes over the last couple of years that allow you to have essentially OTAs in the off season where you're actually able to coach, that's helped. Because I think in the old days when you hired a new coordinator and you could do no coaching in football when other sports could, that those transitions, those changes are more significant. It's less significant now because you get spring ball, you get summer OTAs, and we've been able to get a ton of done. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. I think most importantly, I think the players are confident with what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Back right, Johnny.
Hey James, how are you?
Hey, John.
From the end of last season until now, how would you assess the growth that Drew has kind of underwent, both on the field and then also in the Lash building, working with Andy and working with Danny?
Yeah, I would really say the whole group. Drew, Bo, Grunk, Smolik. I've been as impressed with Smolik's growth and how he's handled this situation as anybody. I think the dialogue is really good. I typically sit in the quarterback meetings, and I think the dialogue and discussions are really good. I think Andy, with 19 years of experience as a play caller, and really being able to float, which is really what he wanted to do coming here, to be able to float as an offensive coordinator, almost like a lot of the NFL organizations do. And then have someone like Danny, even before the rule changes as a GA, Andy was able to get comfortable with Danny, and I think that helped as well. But the dialogue in that room has been really good. I think the players got a ton of respect for Danny as a former player that's walked in their shoes. And I think we have a system now that is going to put not only our best players in position to be successful, but I think Andy's background as a former line coach, I think helps too, because typically on offense, everything you're doing is about how do you make things as challenging on the defense as possible, obviously, but also how do you limit the complication of things for your O-line and for your quarterback. You want to try to keep things as simple for those two positions as you possibly can in two positions that aren't very simplistic. And I think he's done a really good job. And sometimes I think coaches say that because that's coaching 101 interview process and things like that, but the execution of that, I think Andy's done a really good job. Again, experience matters. 19 years as a play caller, that you've learned not only things that have worked, but things that you would do differently. That experience really counts. So Drew obviously has been able to lean into Danny, has been able to lean into Andy, but I also think some of the things systematically that we're gonna do. And I would say even some of these things we're gonna do, you guys are gonna look at and say, I don't know if that's something I would imagine Drew doing, but by him doing just enough of it, opens up and creates opportunities for other things in our offense and makes us difficult to defend. So I think it's really good. I think it's been really good. It's interesting though, kind of to your question too. When you watch just the Kansas film from the last 2 years, Bo was pretty excited. But when you look at over 19 years, Buffalo, different types of quarterbacks, and just the overall knowledge of offense, there's a reason for all those guys in that room to be excited.
Up front, you.
Hey, James. A new era of college football with a playoff. I wonder if that affects at all your approach to an overall season, and also having a tough road opener. How does that change or affect preparation?
Yes, sir. I would say the first thing is the length of this season. I think you guys know we've always talked about trying to create depth. It was always important playing in a conference like the Big Ten. So that was philosophically something that we've always believed in, but I think your point is a good one. It's magnified now, right? You have the potential of 17 games. So how are you going to do that? I think that coupled with some of the rule changes over the last couple of years where you can play in 4 games, save your red shirt, but then you also get to be able to play in all of the postseason games and not burn your red shirt. I think that factors into strategy and how we do these things. And then, just making sure we're doing a really good job of rotating and playing guys for the fourth quarter, for late in the season, and now a playoff run, all those types of things. So I guess to answer your question, it's not really dissimilar to what we've done in the past. I just think it's heightened, if that makes sense. And then your other part of your question was what again?
Opening at West Virginia.
Opening at West Virginia. Fortunately, we've done a decent amount of that. Going to Auburn, we opened, I think, at Auburn. Yeah, I know it's Purdue.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, what game of the season was Auburn? When we went to Auburn? Was their first game? Game 3, excuse me. But Purdue is a great example, going on the road. We've done a few of these things before, I think has been helpful for us. And I think it gets everybody's kind of attention. I have probably more respect for West Virginia than anybody, just because I've played there so many times, and I know what Mountaineer football means to the state of West Virginia. I know what that environment's gonna be like. Played there a ton of times. And in some ways, there's a geographic, component to this as well. There's some historical, factors there as well in terms of, being a bordering state or whatever, however you want to describe it. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great environment. And then on top of that, the way they ended their season, right? I think they ended up winning 9 games, and the quarterback ended up playing really well and finished the season on a real high note. So they got a ton of confidence coming into this year because of that.
In the middle, Max.
Hey, James.
Started getting nervous about geography, like when I said bordering state.
No, I think you got that one right.
I was a little concerned. East Stroudsburg psychology.
When we talked in June, you mentioned that there wasn't anybody that had stood out enough to be named a captain yet to this point. I'm just curious, at the start of fall camp, where you feel the leadership of your team's at?
Yeah, we feel good about it. We typically, I think, for most of the people in the room that have been covering us for a while, we typically wait on that again, unless there's just an obvious person that everybody has identified, players most importantly, and staff, that you feel like going into the summer, this person has separated themselves and everybody views them as such, and you want to name them to have that leadership going in the summer. There's also the aspect of holding it as long as possible, that then there's multiple guys that are working their tails off to become leaders on our team. And the reality is, you know, when you're talking about a team of 125 or whatever the number may be, we're gonna need more leadership than just the captains. So I think we're in a good spot there. I see this team being more vocal. Myself and Chuck Losey and Coach Palco spent a ton of time talking about this. I see these guys being more vocal in challenging their teammates, holding their teammates accountable. I think those things have been pretty evident in the summer workouts and so far in camp. So I think we're in a good place, but we're going to need it. You know, we're going to need a ton of it. And you know, we'll probably hear, you know, probably in the next 2 weeks, we'll probably name captains. But then we're going to need more leadership than just those guys too.
In the middle, Audrey.
Yeah.
Sorry, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just kind of a little housekeeping thing. Is Danny O'Brien still a GA? I mean, obviously, the rules change doesn't matter, but like, is he still a GA or not?
So if the rule changes don't matter, then
Well, because he was listed on the website as a, I'm just genuinely curious if he still is or not.
sometimes you guys ask me questions, and I can't really answer them yet.
Okay.
You guys follow our websites much closer than I do. But right now he is a GA. But to your point, Audrey, which I think is a fair one, there's really no difference anymore with the rule change between a GA and an analyst. We had Danny, and that's one of the reasons why this worked out well, is we had a guy that's still qualified to be a GA, because the rules say you have to be within 7 years of either graduating school or playing. So we felt like he had the experience and the knowledge to serve that role, but still fell under the GA rules, where if he was an analyst, he wouldn't be able to coach. So it ended up working out really well, but now with the rule change, it doesn't matter. So now it comes down to master's degrees. Do you want to get a master's degree? Do you want that time during the season to take classes? But right now, he is currently a graduate assistant. And for a number of reasons, that's probably as far I can go with answering this question at this time.
Thank you.
We got time for one more in the back, Shane.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, Shane.
You have another kicking competition this year. Sander obviously won that competition last year, and then, you know, things happened against West Virginia. How do you see him coming into this year in that competition overall?
So I probably shouldn't say this because this will skew the numbers, but first of all, I love the question on specials. I was with the specials just a minute ago. They have an over-under going every year based on how many of you will actually talk to them on media day. They have a 10 push-up wager going on. I'm not gonna tell you what the number is. But back to your question. It's been really good, and I think the competition is really important. Having 3 guys there, 2 of which that have kicked in college games, I think is really important. A young, exciting player that has really done a nice job in practice. But as we all know, I don't care what position it is, sometimes there's a difference between practice and games. So the game reps carry a lot of weight for us. I think if it's close between 2 guys at the end of training camp, and we're talking about naming a starter, you probably give the edge to the guy that has game experience to go with someone that has no game experience. Then the competition, the gap needs to be significant enough to make up for that. But I just think the competition is important. I think sometimes at those positions, there's not the same level of competition maybe there is for the defensive end or the corner position. And we've tried to create that as much as we can. So Sanders grown a lot and learned from that experience. In terms of just pure talent of kicking the ball, he's impressive. I mean, he's very, very impressive. So we'll see how this plays out, but the competition has been really good. But I think the game experience could and will factor into the decision process. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Coach. We'll have Coach Allen next.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.